The Rams Squad Show is back. I'm Gavin Carlson. And did Stetson Bennett just do that? Did he just do that?
And I'm Rams former defensive tackle Mike Brockers. And is Brennan Jackson officially part of the mob?
Whose house? Rams house. It's the Rams Squad. Sponsored by Gametime. Everything Los Angeles Rams every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the City of Angels. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Here comes the Rampede. The Rams Squad Show starts now.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Oh, yeah, the vibes are great already. You already know that. What is going on, Ramley? Welcome back to another edition of the Rams Squad Show, or as Big Brock called us on the last episode, it's the Mob Squad, baby. We're back. Absolutely. And what a game we just witnessed. The Rams come out of nowhere. Stetson Bennett comes out of the depths of hell, I guess, and just comes back with a touchdown in the final seconds as the Rams steal a 23-22 win over the Chargers. They move to 2-0 in the preseason. We know the score doesn't really matter. The records don't really matter, but it's hard not to be super excited after a game like that. Before we jump into this one, I got to introduce the people's champ, man. He's the favorite. Everybody loves him. Everybody loves him. And I got to say, he's coming in looking drippy. He's got the button-down shirt. You know, he's got the ice. The hat's looking sick as always. Rams legend, and now just a very popular member of the Locked On Podcast Network now. Big Mike Brockers is here. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing good, man. Yes, sir. I'm feeling good after a win, dog. You gotta be turned up after a win.
How can you not be? Yeah, we already got people like Aaron in here going, Brock. See, everyone is a big fan, and obviously so. Everyone's also a huge fan of Stetson Bennett right now. I mean, some of the stuff I'm reading in the chat, absolutely hilarious. People talking about going and buying 13 jerseys now. People talking about him being the truth, him being the backup. We see people in here saying that this is the best preseason for the Rams in 15 years. And I mean, again, I don't like to look too much into the scores and everything like that, but I really do think that a game like this for some of the guys on the team, whether it's guys that make the roster or some that don't, like this is something that will stick with them going into the regular season. Obviously, I have to address the elephant in the room. The third member of the Mob Squad, D-Mac, unfortunately, is not in here. He's at the Dodgers game, and I guess, I don't know. I mean, it's big 2025, and yet it's still tough to get Wi-Fi sometimes. I guess they're doing him dirty with the Wi-Fi in the press box, so it will just be me and Big Brock holding it down tonight. Of course, we'll have D-Mac back in the building with the Mob Squad next week. But enough of the logistics, enough of me yapping. Let's get right into it, man. Let's get right into it because, a little behind the scenes, me and Brock are, getting ready for the show. We're like, oh, wait, the Rams got the ball back one more time. And then it's fourth down, and Stetson Bennett just throws one up. And I just said, it looked like David Tyree in the Super Bowl, a helmet catch. I mean, an absolute unbelievable play on fourth down gives the Rams an opportunity to eventually score the game-winning touchdown. We'll get into all the nitty-gritty of what happened, but just give me your reaction. When you watch that, when you watch the team win on basically a buzzer beater, you see Stetson Bennett, strutting his stuff. You see the bench going crazy. As someone who has been in locker rooms, of course, for many, many years, in preseason games, in playoff games, does this feeling that you get from a win like this, does it carry over into the regular season? How can this help the Rams in their actual regular season in 2025?
It definitely can carry over, but I think the biggest thing about a win like this, especially when you have, your second team and guys like that playing, man, it's the coaching. It's the coaching. It's the coaching of the every situation. I've been in that locker room. I've been a part of that coaching staff where they practice every situation, 2 minute, 1 minute. It doesn't, we actually have live drills during practice where we're practicing, some of the worst case scenarios for the offense or the defense. And, for them to go out there and fully execute that plan and then go out to win a game with it, it just shows how good this coaching staff is, how prepared the players were to get this done, because you never know what's going to happen. So you have to be able to practice, all these situations to execute and to manage throughout a game. So for me, man, it's just a hats off to the coaches, the whole coaching staff. I love the fact that he allowed Coach Aubrey Pleasant to have a head coaching gear on today, and he was fully managing the game. It's kind of like almost handing that torch back.
Right.
I know Sean is doing a hell of a job, with that coaching staff, and also helping the guys up. So to see him, reach back and almost pass the torch, because Aubrey Pleasant will be a head coach in this league one day. He's he's really smart. He's into the game. He's always watching film. He's one of those kind of those nerds. One of those nerds under McVay. So when I look at it, man, I just tip my hat to the coaching staff.
Yeah, I mean, it was absolutely awesome on the broadcast. Just when they did, get Aubrey on the mic, he's going back and forth with the people in the booth, and that was also a great drive. It's funny, they march all the way down inside the 5. They end up not scoring, unfortunately, on 4th down. But just hearing him go back, or hearing and watching him go back and forth between answering the question, but then also making a signal, but then also just being like an energy guy, a leader guy, right? For him to do everything at one time. He's sitting there talking about how complicated it is being the head coach, because you don't get to focus on a position group or on even just one side of the ball. You have so many things you're in charge of. And for him to be going back and forth between answering questions, telling Stetson Bennett, good job. I already fell in love with him and everything about him just watching that. But then to see him and Stetson get to celebrate after that touchdown in the last play, I think you're exactly right. Not only is he a future head coach, but, man, we're really lucky to have him in the coaching staff, whether it's taking, a play or two off of Sean McVay, giving him a chance to breathe, or just having another leader in that locker room. It's absolutely it's a huge luxury. And we just talk about the depth of the roster. I mean, the depth of the coaching staff is there as well. Let's get into that actual drive a little bit more, because it's funny. I did this exact, post-game show on Locked On last year in the preseason, and there was a Stetson Bennett game. It was the very first postcast is what we called it. And he threw 3 picks, I believe, did not have a good game at all, then yet comes all the way back and scores a game-winning touchdown on the final drive of the ball game. And you go, hey, he didn't look great, but that's that Georgia national championship in him, right? That he's able to turn something rough into a clutch moment, right? Today was a great example of, we saw good, then bad, then good again. He was great at the beginning of the game, lead a touchdown drive right away against Chargers starters, but then there were some hiccups, right? He had the interception, which, we'll talk about a little bit as well. He also, on a 4th and 3, only throws the ball 2 yards, which is one of my biggest pet peeves in life, I'll be honest. But he comes back from all of it with, again, an unbelievable drive. The biggest play being 4th and 10 at the 48, 19 seconds left, and Stetson Bennett throws a 40-yarder to Presley, who makes, again, just an unreal catch. He's got 4 guys around him. Looks like Jamar Chase, even though he's not a big guy at all, comes down with it. And then, of course, the very next play, Stetson Bennett goes to Edwards for an 8-yard touchdown to give them the lead. Just talk a little bit about Stetson Bennett, Brock, in terms of his resilience. I mean, how hard is it for any position, right? But especially for a quarterback to come back from mistakes within a game and to have that short-term memory, come out and still win the game for your team, and also long-term memory loss in the sense that he's gotten so much better each preseason. He's gained from each preseason, but he's forgotten all the mistakes he's made in previous games. Just talk about what you saw from Stetson Bennett in terms of his growth.
Man, I love his growth throughout, his career, with the Rams. At first we were really concerned, with him just, throwing the ball up, throwing it away. Yeah. Pressure hits him. He just gets flustered. And now you see his growth. He's not trying to force the ball. After he threw a beam today to I forgot who it was.
Absolutely.
I don't know if it was Presley, another wide receiver, but he threw a beam today. But to see him actually control the offense. Get what, take what the defense gives you, and not focus on, trying to make a play. Like, I feel like he's really comfortable this year in this offense, in the scheme. You have to have thick skin as a quarterback, because every pass isn't going to be perfect. You are going to throw some picks. You are going to, the defense gets paid too, so I love the fact that he allows that just to roll off of him and just go out there and make a play the next series. So to see him go out there and win the game as he did today, and make some of the throws that he made today, man, it was highly encouraging, to me, and I think should be to the fans, man. He's trying to get that backup spot to the Rams. I heard this week the Rams going against the Saints, Jimmy G didn't look too well. So after I just praised him last week, but he didn't look too well in the practice versus the Saints. And, Bennett looked amazing in this preseason game. So to me, man, he's battling. He's battling for that second position behind Matthew Stafford. And this was a good showing for him, especially coming back and winning after he throws a pick to a D-lineman. But we'll talk about that later in the show.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you bring up an interesting point because, again, it's the preseason is funny, right? It's like you're searching for things to talk about and hope that they mean something, right? The Rams, and it's ironic, very different from the Chargers, right? We saw it today where Justin Herbert is playing in week 2 of the preseason, right? Almost, I want to say 8 of the 11 starters for the Chargers defense were on the field that opening drive. The Rams are completely different. Sean McVay, he doesn't even play his backup quarterback, Jimmy G, because he is that against playing his starters, right? And yet, what it does create is it creates this weird situation where, like you're saying, Stetson Bennett comes out. He gets to play the whole game last week. He gets to play the whole game this week. And like you said, Jimmy G didn't have a great practice session. It's also Stetson Bennett now. Whether it's with the Rams or with another team, he is going to make an NFL roster, right? His goal coming into this preseason, into this training camp, was not probably to be the Rams backup when you know that Jimmy G's not even playing. He has nothing to lose. Stetson's like, I got to earn a spot on a roster. Well, now it feels like the Rams are in a position where no. Like, you kind of need Stetson Bennett on your roster, right? You might have to cut an extra DB. You might have to cut an extra special teams guy and make sure Stetson Bennett stays. He's your third string QB. That might even be in a weekly battle with Jimmy G for the backup spot if ever needed. And of course, knock on wood, we'll never need to see either of them in a regular season game. But I think you're absolutely right that Stetson Bennett, at the very least, is going to make this roster, but he might push for that backup spot now. And that's exactly what you want to see from a guy getting an opportunity. Well, when we come back from our first break, I want to talk a little bit more about that opening drive, because again, the Chargers had their starters out there defensively, and yet Stetson Bennett, and more specifically Blake Corum, looked like same level caliber NFL players on that drive. Also, the defense did pretty well against Justin Herbert in his drive as well. So we'll talk about that. We got to talk about that big man interception. I got to ask Big Brock if he's ever done something like that, putting his head down in front of an NFL QB. So we'll get to all of that after our first break here on a victory edition of this Rams Squad Show postgame. We'll be right back. Now, today's show is brought to you by Betterhelp. These days, it feels like there's advice for everything. Cold plunges, gratitude journals, screen detoxes. But how do you know what actually works for you? With so much information online about mental health and wellness, it can be overwhelming to figure out what's true and what will actually help. That's where talking to a licensed therapist through BetterHelp can make all the difference. You get real, personalized guidance instead of just guessing based on something you saw on social media. Now, with over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, serving more than 5 million people. It's easy to fit into your schedule, just a click to connect, and you can even switch therapists anytime if you need to. So talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Back here live on the Rams Squad Show. The Mob Squad is back, and we just talked about Stetson Bennett leading an unbelievable comeback where they are facing a 4th and 10 with less than 20 seconds left at midfield, complete a 40-yard pass, and then with just under 10 seconds left, throw a game-winning touchdown. We already talked about what that could mean for Stetson Bennett in this roster, but let's talk about the rest of the roster and what we saw. The Chargers electing to have their starters play in this game. We saw Justin Herbert come out and he made some really impressive throws. He looked like a starting star NFL QB against backup secondary. But one thing I did notice is all of his completions were not to wide open guys. Yes, he had one kind of wide open throw to Ladd McConkey. There was that massive hit where Quentin Johnson unfortunately left this game almost on a stretcher. But outside of that, Herbert did get sacked. He threw a couple incomplete passes, and he did only make one impressive throw in a tight window, which is a good sign. But I'm curious, Brock, completely different approach, right? The Chargers choose to start their starters just for the opening drive here. We already talked about how the Rams don't do that. What's your opinion as someone who, of course, is on the field? did you prefer to maybe get a rep or two in preseason games to, get that game action back before the regular season? Or would you have rather just sat out the whole preseason and be really fresh going into week one?
It depends. And, the Rams do a good job at, doing joint practices throughout the week. And, McVay, for the most part, doesn't have to deal with, he doesn't have AD anymore, so you don't have to worry about training camp fights. So for him, he gets a lot of the ones get the reps throughout the week. You go through practice, you get those game intense reps where you're going against another team. So everything, like I said last week, when you have joint practices, everything is a game rep. So you don't have time to, take any plays off, or like I say, brother-in-law with somebody. You're actually going full tilt when you go these reps. So if I'm getting 100, 150 reps or whatever throughout the week, a full tilt game reps, like there's no need to play my starters in the game. I've seen what I've had to see throughout the week. But if you don't have those joint practices and you are kind of, worried that your team won't be prepared for game one, you want to see what they look like. You don't want them just fully lax throughout the preseason and then game one hits and they got to ramp everything up. So for me, with the Rams, I love the way they do it. Get those game reps throughout the week with the ones. They'll be going for the most part. The ones will be in full tilt through all drills. And the second team doesn't really get a lot of reps throughout the week. So, when preseason comes, that's when you see those second team guys get their reps that they want, they need, and the coaches can fully evaluate who they who should be on the team or who they want or who they don't. So for me, it's all about managing. If you feel like your ones if you feel like your ones are getting enough reps throughout the week doing those joint practices, there's no need for preseason games. But if you feel like they're not getting the reps and you feel like that continuity with the team isn't there, then definitely you want to see your ones get a couple of series throughout preseason for sure.
And be honest with me, okay? I'm sure that felt like the good media trained, like good polished answer, but you can't tell me that Michael Brocker is in year 2 or 3 of his career has the same opinion as in year 8, year 9. We got guys, we already had the discussion on the last show about why are we worried about Matthew Stafford practicing. You talk about how many veterans there are, right? Devontae Adams obviously doesn't need many reps. Kyron Williams obviously doesn't need many reps. Be real with me. I'm sure the answer is different in year 2 for you than year 8, right? I'm sure you probably are like, hey, I want to take the least amount of hits possible and be as fresh as possible. Or am I just a guy who's never played football yapping and you're going to stand, correct me?
No, for sure. No, for sure. Yeah, you're year 8 and you're like, what do I have to prove in preseason, Because for me, and people don't think about this because they're not players, but when you're going out there as a starter and you're going against a second team or third team guy, that guy is fighting for a position. He is going to try to bully you or do whatever he can to make his name known so that team can, keep him on the team. So for us, for a veteran like myself, when I was 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever, I didn't want to go in the preseason game because I just knew the intensity that the guys that were playing in those games were fighting for jobs were coming with. So I was like, man, let those young guys have it, and I'll be ready week 1. But for me, I didn't want to play preseason games toward the end of my career for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's like it's already the most grueling sport on planet Earth, and you have an opportunity to take a couple weeks off, and then Jim Harbaugh saying, "Hey, no, Herbert, actually go get sacked right now." I guess to be fair, I'll be fair to Harbaugh. I guess Herbert did tell him, I want to, experience a pass rush at least once before the regular season. But still, if I was a Chargers fan, knowing the injuries they've already faced, you're short of offensive tackle for the whole season, and you see that Rams pass rush, even if it isn't the starters, pass rushes look great all preseason. They're coming after Herbert. They get to him on the first drive, and I'm probably sitting there holding my breath if I'm a Chargers fan, right? But you talked about kind of the intensity that the backups are going to show, and I really think Blake Corum kind of showed a level that I haven't seen from him yet. Maybe I don't know. I've been kind of up and down, hot and cold with Blake Corum. Obviously, respect everything he did in college at Michigan, and I also was pretty excited for him to be a solid backup for Kyren Williams. We talked about it, the first two shows, how surprised we were that he didn't get much of a role last season. You talk about the luxury that this team has at just about every position, having multiple guys that can contribute. And for Blake Corum to do what he did again against the starters right away, you show a confidence in him after there's a Drake Stoops catch for 11 yards. You go Blake Corum for 8. Then 2 plays later, Blake Corum gets stuffed. Guess what? You give it right back to him again on 2nd and 10. He has, in my opinion, one of the best runs of the game for 11 yards there. And it just felt like he was running with a physicality. It felt like the offensive line was being really physical, again, against a Chargers front seven that is actually going to be starting every Sunday. So you talked a little bit about the intensity that backups show maybe compared to starters, but this is a game on national TV. The starters that are on the field for the Chargers, they're not going any less intense, right, in this setting. So how impressive is it for backups on the offensive line, for the Bo Limmers of the world at center, right, for guys like that to be pushing a Chargers front seven that's going to be starting on Sundays?
What did I just say? When you're fighting for a job or you're trying to impress coaches on your staff and you get a chance to go against the starters of another team, and you go out there and manhandle them or at least control the line of scrimmage, then the coaches are looking back like, hey, we got a good one on our team, So the intensity might be up for the ones, but it's definitely up for the 2s and 3s. So for them to go out there and really show it, you seen the way they were running. It's almost like, they told them like, hey, the Chargers will be starting their defense. So let's go out here and see what y'all can do. And then Blake Corum just showed out. He showed why he should be in the role of this offense. And, like I said, man, you got a little chip on your shoulder when somebody says, hey, their starters are going to play. What you going to do? And you go out there and show that you can be you're a part of this league. You deserve to be have a role on this offense and a part of this team. So for me, like I said, man, the intensity is up. When you feel like, oh, I can go against the starters, I can make my name known versus, the starters of another team. Hey, I can have a chance to stay on this team. So that's what I seen. That's why the intensity I felt like from Blake Corum and a lot of those guys, Stetson Bennett, was so high because they felt like, hey, these are damn near game reps. These are real seasoned game reps versus the starters. So let me go out here and show what I have.
Yeah. And I do think not only Blake Corum, of course, we have to talk about, what Jarquez Hunter was able to do. And again, you look at the box score, I think it's extremely misleading. You see 4 for 22 for Corum, and you're probably like, Gavin, why the heck are you talking about Blake Corum when Jarquez Hunter goes 15 for 55, Cody Schrader goes 13 for 48. Again, I think the aspect of it being Corum against maybe a couple starters for the Chargers is impressive. But Jarquez Hunter looked great as well. Again, he runs with the no gloves. He's a gritty Southern boy. And he had a couple runs, one in particular where he goes for 11 yards where you're like, wait a second. Like, I think that was when Aubrey Pleasant was on the mic and Mina Kimes goes, now, wait a second. Like, stop talking, Aubrey. Look at what Jarquez Hunter's doing. He's shown some flashes. Again, I think it's going to be a really interesting situation because you look at the way Sean McVay handled Blake Corum last year in the preseason, and he thought, okay, he's set. He's going to get reps throughout the season. And instead, it just kind of was Kyren Williams or nothing, right? This preseason, Corum is getting more opportunities. They're treating him like a starter almost because Jarquez Hunter is getting the whole second, third, fourth quarter until Cody Schrader comes in. I don't know if that means Jarquez Hunter is actually battling with Blake Corum for the backup role. If it means Jarquez Hunter is battling with Cody Schrader for the third string role, I can't imagine that's the case, but it'll be interesting to see how the running back room shakes out. I do really think it's one of the only kind of position groups where there's some uncertainty, and that's another luxury the Rams have, where it's like our starting 22 is pretty set, right? We don't have to worry about that, and that's something that we're very grateful to have. Now, we do have to quickly get into this interception that Stetson Bennett threw, and we'll go into what it maybe means in terms of the read and everything. Before we take our break, I got to hear from you. We see the big D-lineman make the interception, and I don't know if he's 300 pounds, 350 pounds, 400 pounds, but he's rumbling down the field after he makes the pick, and he absolutely runs over Stetson Bennett, lowers his shoulder, runs him over. I got 2 questions for you. 1, have you ever had a pick? And 2, if you have, and if you've had a few, I'm sorry for underestimating you, did you ever get a chance to return it like that? Because I know that's a D lineman's dream.
Man, yeah. So I did have a pick. I had a couple of picks. So I have one
Okay.
pick in college, a one-handed pick at LSU versus Northern Louisiana. So I don't really think that counts, but it was an awesome play of athleticism from a D-lineman. But I did have a pick on a 2-point play
Okay.
for the Rams versus the Niners, and
Oh.
I looked and seen how far I had to go if I want to return this. There was no way I was running that far, so I was just like, "Yeah, no, I'm either I go down, let somebody tackle me, but I refused to run 95 yards back for a 2-point play." So I was
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, no, I'm good." I had to make a business decision on that one.
Yeah, I was going to say business decision, the smart decision, right? It's one thing if it pick six is the opportunity, or of course, even if you don't make it to the end zone, at least you're setting up your offense. But when it's
Mhm.
literally run 100 yards as a D lineman and somehow not get tackled, or this was all worth nothing. Yeah, I think you made the right decision to just, take it easy. I love it. I
Mhm.
love it. When we get back, I do want to talk about that pick and just why I really don't want people to overreact to certain things. I don't want people to overreact to Stetson Bennett and say he's now absolutely the backup. I don't want people to overreact before this comeback and say, hey, that pick is another example of why he's not good enough. Or, hey, that fourth down where he didn't is a good example of why he's not good enough. Again, it's always somewhere in the middle. So I do want to talk a little bit more about Stetson Bennett. I know we're talking a lot about him. And then just some final takeaways as we go into the third preseason game, because the Rams are looking really good. You're 2-0. The vibes are great. So we'll talk about all that after our next break here on what? It's the Mob Squad edition of the Rams Squad
Yes,
Show. We'll be
sir.
right back. Now, today's show is also brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, whether it's me, Brock, D-Mac, we're missing you, by the way, we're all playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. I've used Yahoo Fantasy for years. I've been playing fantasy football since high school, and we always were running on Yahoo Fantasy. I don't know if it's the app, the colors, the tradition, but you got to play on Yahoo Fantasy. And they have a new great feature, the Guillotine Leagues. They just dropped that every week, the lowest scoring team is eliminated and the last one standing wins. So whether you're all in on something new like that, or you like sticking to head-to-head leagues or public leagues, Yahoo's got you covered. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped those Guillotine Leagues, the killer way where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week. Again, I really, really like that one. Now's the time to get your league together and try out that mode, or stick to the classics like a head-to-head private league or a public league. So stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnNFL. Whose house? Rams house, baby. The Rams are 2-0. They're 2-0 at SoFi Stadium, and it feels good. I know it's a preseason game, but when you got the Chargers, you're sharing the stadium, you got this little mini rivalry. To be able to silence the baby blue jerseys in that crowd and really have that Rams nation hyped after the Stetson Bennett comeback touchdown, it's a great feeling. And above all else, it's just got me fired up for football. I got to ask, do
Right.
you have any sort of, obviously you're a former player, so normally week one is probably very stressful for you, but now in your post, foot playing career, do you have any like week one traditions when it's the first opening Sunday of the season, you watching it with the boys, or take me through maybe your game days now that you're not playing anymore?
Man, to be honest with you, because I played so much football, watching football, and it isn't as I enjoy watching the game, but it definitely has to be teams I like.
Mhm.
Obviously my Rams and
Yeah.
other teams that I play for,
Mhm.
but I try to get a little churchy and a little spiritual before I
Mm.
get to watching the games, and then
There you go.
usually, man, I'm here with the kids. Me and my son will probably watch the game together for the most part,
Mhm.
and he'll be asking me 1,000 questions about
Mhm.
what's going on because he loves football. But
That's awesome.
for the most part, it's very intimate with the family, with my son watching the game. And if I do, this year probably be a little different. But if I do get to go out, probably go out with my boys, watch it at a bar or something like that. Nothing
Mm.
crazy.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. I can imagine. I'm now you're making me think of. I think it was Carson Beck who had that quote where he said that he doesn't like watching football because it's stressful. Because he's a
Mhm.
quarterback and every time you look at a pre-snap, you're probably thinking about reads. So, I mean, do you get some of that then where it's like, in addition to, like you said, having other obligations on a Sunday, I'm the same way. It's probably nicer for you on the East Coast, at least, because you can sneak it in the morning before the game start, right? But I'm curious, is there a level of that for you too, where it's like you're watching the game and you're thinking about, oh man, my coach would be screaming at me to do this right now, or right? Does that kind of jump in as well?
Yeah, I mean, I watch a lot of like the little nuances, the little I would say bullshit that goes on that people don't notice as a player, like a guy getting bodied away from the ball that, they're watching the ball, but it's a guy back here that, got cut, or, they end up getting a double team and got pancaked. And, I'm watching, the D-lineman complain about holes and they never get them. So I'm always watching like the little nuances in the game that people don't really realize, and they're like, "What? How did you know that?" I'm like, "Bro, I've been watching the left tackle this whole time. He's been, sitting in the backfield. He can't do that. That's illegal formation." So, right. Yeah, I'm watching all the little things, not following the ball all the time.
Yeah, you're not like the rest of us who are just like, scrolling on our fantasy football squad and making sure that our guys are catching touchdowns, right? You're like, no. I see all this other stuff. I love it. And that's why it's so great, again, that we get to have you on these shows every week, because you're going to give us that insight that, as much as I love football, as much as I think I know a lot about football, I'm not going to ever say I know more than a former player. So that's why it's great to have you in here. But we already talked about everything that happened with Stetson Bennett, except we talked about the interception. I just want to clarify real quick for those who didn't see. It wasn't one of those cases where you're going to blame it on the quarterback, right? I mean, you tell me if you disagree, but that was a play where he's throwing a quick slant. He's looking strictly at the receiver, and it almost felt a little dirty by the Chargers. Like, even the announcers were saying, they're like, that's a regular season kind of defensive play where you drop the DT back, you're rushing the corner instead. That's something that you save for, Justin Herbert's on Sundays, not for Stetson Bennett on a Saturday night in the middle of August. So it felt a little dirty there. I have to make sure I defended Stetson Bennett there. But I guess I'm curious too. How much do teams try to keep things really basic in the preseason, both to not show their hand, but also, to maybe be fair, I guess, to the opposing team or opposing player, right? Obviously it's different defensively from offensively, but I always think back to when teams are running fake punts in the preseason and you're like, why would you do that? You could have used that in week 4 and now you already wasted it, right? So what's your take on that? And do you have any experience of maybe the playbook looking different in the preseason between a regular season?
Oh, for sure. It's very vanilla in the preseason. Like you said, the coaches don't want to show their hand, not one bit. But, you will get some situations where, you can't help it, man. When you're a competitor, you're a competitor, So I think, a little bit of Harbaugh got in there. He wants to win the game. So he gets out there and runs a fire zone where the 3 technique drops out and catches a pick. So for me, I think, you can't help it as a competitor, man. Somebody, gets under these coaches' skin. You just want to win a game, want their players to feel what it feels like to be victorious. So, to sneak a little fire zone in there, it's like, man, come on now. You don't have to do that. But at the same time, hey, I understand you're a competitor. You're trying to, get your team to win the game. So you're pulling out all the little tricks too. But, they're not going to run anything crazy in the preseason. So you might see 1 or 2 plays, but you won't see the whole defensive scheme or offensive scheme.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because it did feel like, this game, there was some aspects of it that felt like a regular season game, not just like that one play call there. We already talked plenty about the starters playing for the first drive for the Chargers, but when you have Tanner Ingle playing safety for the Rams, and luckily it wasn't a big deal. He's knocking Quentin Johnson on his head on like the 3rd player of the game, and they got to bring out a stretcher. That's crazy. Then later in the game, he has a similar play where he crushes another guy. Tanner Ingle was laying the boom. Then we, of course, have the way the game ended with it seeming like, this matters, even though it really didn't. It was fun to have it feel like a regular season game again with the rivalry aspect as well. But I really thought Tanner Ingle was a guy who stood out defensively in the secondary. Sure, it was a couple rough hits maybe, but you got to find a way to make a name for yourself right in the preseason. That was his way of doing it. But let's get to your guy, Brennan Jackson, because he was arguably the standout for the defense today. And I know as a D-lineman, you were loving to see what he was doing. Talk to me about that.
Man, I love it. I love the way Shula has his defense. It's almost like he has built-in stunts every play. And
Mhm.
you might not get open every play with the defensive stunt, but if you continue to run them, somebody's gonna blow a pass coverage or you know the offensive line isn't gonna pick everything up. They
Mhm.
might think somebody else is coming. They might see us, safety over here that's showing over this side. So
Mhm.
running games, behind your coverage. I love it. And today you've seen that they ran the games. The defensive end comes in, pretty much clears out the whole line for Brennan Jackson, and
Mhm.
he gets 2 sacks, off of those. So I love to see when defensive linemen get their shine, because don't people don't know sacks are hard to come by. You
Mhm.
see Aaron Donald gets a sack every play. That's just because he's a phenomenal player. But
Mhm.
sacks are hard to come by. So
Right.
when you get a sack, man, that's a big deal. So for him to get 2 sacks in his game, and to also get a sack versus the ones, let's be real, like he really showed what he had. So guys fighting, like I said, fighting for position, that's a good deal when you got 2 sacks on under your belt.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I do love as well Aubrey Pleasant during the game. He had a quote where he said, I think he said something like, earn the right to pass rush, meaning on first and
Mm-hmm.
second down, handle your assignments in the run game, especially against a team like the Chargers, where they're run heavy, they're smash mouth, Joe Alt, running down your neck, right? So I really love what that idea of earn the right to get, to have an opportunity to get a real pass rush rep and then take advantage. And he certainly did that today. I'm curious too, because obviously the Chargers, they're having some O-line issues with the loss of Rashawn Slater and everything. And there was some talk during the broadcast about, their line is a little shaky now because they got to move Joel over to left tackle. You got to back up right tackle. How much does a defensive line, whether it's the coaches or a player like you, how much do they target, right? Because everyone knows about, hey, there's a backup corner. I'm throwing at him every play until he makes a
Mm-hmm.
play, right? Or hey, there's a backup QB. I'm blitzing him every play until he shows me he can, be ready for it. Is there a level of that with the D line? Like, obviously, the offense is going to do everything they can to maybe chip the D end on the weak side or just run it away from it. But how much does a defensive player or a defensive coach say, no, let's go after a weak side of an offensive line?
Oh, for sure. They take advantage of it. If you got a guy who's switching a position, to the left to right or whatever, you want to take advantage to see if he's prepared for it. You might put your best guy on it. I know, years JJ Watt used to, hey, if they had a backup offensive lineman, he would line up on him every play because he
Right.
would get a sack every play. So,
Right.
for the most part, if you find a weak link on the offensive line, you want to put your best player on to make some havoc in the backfield. So for me, yeah, man, anytime you had a backup guy, you knew he was coming in, you would do it. But like personally, like I hated when somebody got hurt during a game, like somebody I wasn't prepared for. I felt like I had the worst games because I'm like, who is this guy? Like I prepared all week for 74, and
Right.
74 gets hurt in the first series, and now I got this guy. Like, what does he do? Like I don't like I have
Right.
no film on this guy. Like I don't
Right.
even know what to do. So you're finding out throughout the game, like, okay, or he's a puncher or he's a whatever. So for me, I hated when guys went down during the game that I was preparing for, because the next guy behind him, I might not have no film on him. So yeah, I hated during the game, but when I was prepared for it and I knew like, oh yeah, so-and-so got hurt in practice and he won't be playing and you'll be playing against this guy, I'll hurry up and, ask the guys upstairs, hey, give me some film on whoever's backing him up, because I want to see, what his weakness is. And, like I say, yeah, you are licking your chops when you get a guy that, never played that position or is switching positions and things like that, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's interesting. And again, like you always hear it when it's a DB or the backup QB or something like that. And again, it's like you forget, or sometimes people forget. At the end of the day, the game is won or lost at the line of scrimmage. And when you have even the slightest edge like that, it often makes a difference when a lot of people don't realize it. Before we let you go, because I know you got to go, you're looking fresh. I got to go let you, look fresh somewhere that isn't on camera with me. David's got a quick question for you. He said,
Yeah,
what's the favorite Rams home field? Edward Jones, the Coliseum, or SoFi? What was your favorite place to play and why?
Probably the Coliseum, just from the history. It's so much history there, and you know so many players before you that have played on the same field, the same grass they've ran on. It's like you just look around, you're like, dang, like this is where it all happened. This is where OJ was running. So for me, I'm like, the history of the Coliseum is what made that the best, and then you can throw 100,000 people in there, and you have the most lit stadium in the world. So for me, it was definitely the Coliseum.
I'll be honest. I was scared that you were going to say that because I'm a Bruin, and so I hate everything USC, including the Coliseum. Yeah, like he says right here, he says I'm a Bruins guy. I never liked the Coliseum. I'll be honest though, as much as I was born and raised to hate USC, and I will hate USC till the day I die, the Coliseum is nice. I'm never going to say it's not. But in terms of history, I can't deny that either. Let's talk about the future, though. I think I'm feeling good about UCLA this year. I'll just leave it at that. But we're going to let the man himself, Big Mike Brock, go. We appreciate you as always. And when we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this roster because the depth that this team has, it feels like night and day from a couple years ago. I'm really excited to talk about some of the key guys we saw in the receiving core today, the depth of the defense, and looking forward to the end of the preseason as well. So we're going to do that after our last break here. So long, Big Brock. Mob Squad is down to just me. We'll be right back.
Yes, sir.
Back here live on the Rams Squad Show. Once again, the Rams win a stunner. Let's be honest, an absolute stunning win. And it's really fun. I don't know about you guys. I am so giddy that football is back for so many reasons. Maybe it's because my Angels stink. Maybe it's because, as I know there's Angels people in here watching, maybe it's because my Angels stink. But no, it's because the fall is the best time of the year, especially when you're not in school anymore. And we had this weekend the Premier League season start. I'm a soccer guy, but I know 99% of the people here are all about, come on now, it's football season. And just seeing a game like this where it feels like it doesn't matter. You remind yourself it doesn't matter, but then every single play, something happens and you get fired up and you're like, gosh, that first Sunday when it does matter, it's going to hit. It's going to hit. And we got it right away in this one, right? Just even seeing Justin Herbert come out for the Chargers with Jim Harbaugh, seeing, unfortunately, Quentin Johnson get destroyed, right? It still did remind me like, hey, this is football, man. And then to see the way this game ended, to see how Stetson Bennett responds, right, where he starts off looking so impressive, leading that drive with Blake Corum and company. We talked about that beautiful touchdown strike he had in the middle of this ball game to Mario Williams. In case you missed that one, it was his second touchdown, an absolute laser, 38 yards, where Stetson Bennett just has a nice 7-step drop, steps on his back foot and throws an absolute laser right down the seam, splits the corner and the safety. It was, Mina, MJD, and myself, we all agreed it was probably the best throw Stetson Bennett has ever made in an NFL game. It was so impressive, but it was only topped by what he did at the end of the game. Again, one more time in case you missed it, that unbelievable 40-yard completion on fourth down, and then the 8-yard touchdown pass to Edwards. That's where I want to start this last segment, is talking about the receivers, because in the first game, it was the Xavier Smith show, right? Today, we really got a lot of guys showing out in this one. Of course, Xavier Smith did have 4 catches for 49 yards. He had a 25-yard catch in this one. He had a 30-plus yard catch in week 1. But we saw multiple guys. I mean, the catch that Edwards made was simply unbelievable, right? Just simply unbelievable. And the catch that Brennan Presley makes on the 40-yard completion is probably the best catch we'll see in the preseason. Again, there's 2, maybe 3 guys draped on his back. He makes that catch. And what's so huge for him is you make a play like that, and that alone is enough for whether it's your coaches or coaches of another roster to say, hey, he made that catch. We have to look at what he did in this game. And if that was the only thing Brennan Presley did in this game, they'd click on the tape, they'd see that play, and they'd say, oh, he did nothing else. No. He finishes with 6 catches for 102 yards, including the biggest catch of the game, the biggest catch of the preseason. Very impressed there. Mario Williams, we'll see. He's kind of had an up and down preseason. He did have that 38-yard touchdown, though, which is fantastic. And then Cody Schrader, I love that he's able to contribute with an 18-yard catch out of the backfield in addition to having 13 carries for 48 yards. It's going to be an interesting battle between Britton Covey and a couple other guys for maybe that punt return / wide receiver 5-6 role, right? And then Konate Mumfield, a guy that has been making a lot of noise in training camp. He did catch the touchdown. You got to give him credit for that, right? He does catch the touchdown, 2 catches for 12 yards. But maybe we want to see a little bit more from him based on what we were hearing in training camp about how he's been performing. Already talked a little bit about the defense, obviously talking about Brennan Jackson being the biggest performer for the defense with those 2 sacks. But we have to talk about Sean Dolak because this is a guy that was making noise all training camp as well. And it's so nice when a guy makes noise in training camp when there's nothing but positivity coming out, but then he comes out in an actual game and makes an impact. And he did that here, 7 total tackles, 4 solo tackles. And let's not forget, this team in recent years, even just going back to last year, they have a history of guys coming in and kind of coming out of nowhere and being big-time players in the linebacking core, right? Sean Dolak is a guy coming out of Buffalo, right? Obviously, a ton of tackles in his college career, in case you don't know. One of the leaders in tackles during his entire career, but still not a guy you're expecting a lot of when he comes onto this roster. He's been making noise all offseason, and he's doing it in the games as well. I want to go back to last year, right? Omar Speights was a guy out of LSU that nobody was talking about. I ironically knew a decent bit about him because I was at another job. I was working for Fox Sports at the time, and basically one of my jobs was to cut up highlight reels for 6th round, 7th round undrafted guys. I saw a lot of Omar Speights. I was pretty impressed. And what does he do? He maybe wasn't making as much noise during the offseason or during training camp, but in preseason, he was arguably the best player. What did he do? He turned that into becoming a really meaningful member of this defense in the regular season, right? And so it feels like in addition to that D-line, which has so much depth, and we're talking about drafting guys in the 3rd round that don't even need to be starters, right? They can just be luxuries. It feels like we're doing that again, but in the linebacking core as well, where we've got Omar Speights stacking him with the Sean Dolak now and some more veterans. It's very, very nice to know that the front 7 is just disgustingly deep. And so it creates a situation, and I got to give credit to my man D-Mac, who I'm missing right now, and of course Brock as well. D-Mac said something where the Rams are obviously in a situation where it's win now with the state of the roster, and you can't understate how important it is to only have 1 or 2 weaknesses going into the season and hopefully throughout the season if there's no injuries, right? If you're a team that's, even you're winning games, maybe you're a team like, I don't want to, like the Vikings last year or something like that, where throughout the season it kind of feels like their record's a little better than they actually are, and maybe they actually have a couple holes or something like that. With the Rams, the front 7, it feels like not only the starters, but even the backups are solid. We know that the weapons are solid. We know that Matthew Stafford, if he's healthy, one of the best QBs in the NFL, right? The biggest hole for this team is the secondary. But the good thing is, if it gets to week 7 and everything else is clicking and the secondary is not clicking, it's very easy to then go make one trade, send a 3rd round pick, and go get one of the best, defensive backs in football that might be on an expiring contract or something like that, right? It's so much easier when it's one clear weakness, right? It's not, hey, we need 2 corners, but we also don't have a backup linebacker. We also don't have a 3rd pass rusher. No. The Rams have a 3rd pass rusher, a 4th pass rusher. They have a 3rd middle linebacker, a 4th middle linebacker, right? They've got Kyron Williams and Blake Corum and maybe a Jarquez Hunter, right? There's depth everywhere. And so I know the offensive line, we'll see how healthy the left tackle position gets. But outside of that, it feels like the only position where you're not in love with the starters and you're certainly not in love with the backups is the secondary. But to only have one position group like that, it's huge because then you can go fill that hole immediately. That's one thing I do want to see going into the rest of the preseason is anyone going to make a name for themselves in the secondary? Again, I was very impressed that when Justin Herbert came out outside of that wide open throw to Ladd McConkey, which is just against the zone and not really on the secondary anyways, outside of that, I really do think the secondary was on receivers throughout that first drive. Quentin Johnson not only did he get drilled, but he also was covered pretty well by the corner there. And then even in that one completion on the sideline by Herbert, that was just an unbelievable throw, right? So I do think the secondary did a decent job in that case, but I would like to see maybe somebody really make a name for themselves and say, hey, I'm a guy that should be looked at as, the sleeper to be the fourth corner, or maybe even the third corner on this team, maybe the third safety behind a Quentin Lake, right? Something like that. So that's what I want to see in the rest of this preseason. But outside of that, you cannot argue with how this preseason has gone for the Angels. You get to see Konate Mumfield catch a game-winning touchdown in the last seconds from Stetson Bennett, a week after Stetson Bennett balls out, throwing the ball to Xavier Smith and company. You feel great about Bennett. You feel great about some of the backup receivers. You feel great about the running back depth. And I can go on and on about the depth of that front seven. So you really have to feel good about things. You're 2-0. You don't have any injuries from the preseason. And as long as Stafford is okay, which we do think he is, you are in a great position going into week 1 on September 7th against the Texans. So, of course, one more preseason game next week, 10 a.m. It will be the Browns. We will be in Cleveland. We'll see. I mean, it might be fun to watch Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel and that whole madness. But I really do think we are in a great position. And all we have to do is not have anyone get hurt, not have any crazy question marks pop up in the next couple of weeks, and we'll be in a really good spot going into September 7th. I do agree with what David said in terms of there were a couple standouts, right? I'm not going to say the secondary played horrible or anything. I do think there were a couple players, not just him, that played well in this game. Trayvon says the safeties being versatile makes the secondary a decent group. Yeah, I mean, I'm very biased. I love me some Quentin Lake because he is a former Bruin, but Quentin Lake, extremely versatile in terms of he can be a nickel corner if you need him to be. He can be a third safety if you need him to be. Cam Curl, I think we're going to see some growth from him. Cameron Kitchens, I certainly think we're going to see some growth from him as well. But it does feel like two guys you're hoping take a next step, right? We're so used to rookies coming on the scene and doing what Jared Verse did and doing what Braden Fisk did, right? I want to see what Cam Curl can do, as he now goes into another season. He's still just 26 years old. You want to see him maybe take that next step, right? And they'll be the same with Cameron Kitchens as well, a guy who let's not forget, he's just going to be in his second year. This guy's just a third-round pick, and all of a sudden he's expected to be a starting safety for a team that has their eyes on the Super Bowl, right? So a lot of pressure on a Cam Curl and a Cameron Kitchens who maybe aren't elite yet, right? I do think that might still be the biggest question mark, but you're absolutely right. There's versatility there. You give Shula an opportunity to be creative, and it's a lot easier to be a good secondary when you have a D-line and a front seven like that in front of you. So with all that being said, we are going to wrap this one up. Huge shout out to all of you for sticking around till the end. I know this was kind of a makeshift squad show today in the sense that no DMAC, unfortunately, and then Brock did have to leave us, but appreciate you sticking around with me. Again, I'm Gavin Carlson. You can catch me on the Locked On Angels YouTube channel in about an hour. I'll be doing the postcast over there. I don't even know the score right now. It's 4-1 A's. Wonderful. But all right, I'm going to wrap this one up. Shout out to all of you in here. Have a great rest of your Saturday night. The squad will be back Thursday, once again, every week. Don't forget, it's not just the post-game shows after the game. We also have a midweek show that's going up on Thursday morning every single week. So we'll see you guys back here Thursday for the midweek show, and then we'll see you back here after that Browns game for another post-game show where the trio, the true Mob Squad, will be back. Have a great rest of your Saturday night, everybody. Go Rams, and go get you that Stetson Bennett jersey, whoever said it, because I can't blame you after what we just watched. Take care. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.